Welcome to the Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thanks for being with us. The war in Iran began just over a month ago when airstrikes launched by the United States and Israel killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who had led the country for more than 3 decades. His son, Mojtaba Khamenei, was named successor soon after. At least 1,900 Iranians have been killed and 20,000 have been injured since the war began, according to Iran's health ministry. On the U.S. side, 13 service members were killed and more than 300 have been injured. When and how the conflict will end remains uncertain. The United States has proposed a 15-point ceasefire plan, but Iranian officials have rejected it, calling the terms unrealistic. Last weekend, Pakistan's foreign minister announced that his country is willing to facilitate peace talks between the two nations. Meanwhile, the impact of the war is being felt deeply here in Northeast Ohio. Our region is home to a vibrant and long-standing Iranian-American community that shares its culture through traditions like local Ramadan festivities and events like One World Day. This year, Cleveland also hosted its first Nowruz, or Persian New Year, celebration at City Hall. Today, we turn to members of the Iranian-American community to hear how they are processing this moment, balancing maintaining ties to their heritage, concern for loved ones abroad, and life here in the United States. Joining me today in studio, we have Mohammed Sarabi, Northeast Ohio resident. Welcome to the show, Mohammed.
Thank you very much.
We also have Hangame Arjormendi, an MBA candidate in the Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Joining us by phone, we have Manusher, also a resident of Northeast Ohio. Manusher, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
If you'd like to be a part of this conversation, maybe you're an Iranian American listening or watching who would like to share your thoughts, or maybe you have questions, you can give us a call at 866-578-0903. You can also email us at soi@ideastream.org or message us on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. I'll start with a question for the panel, and I'll start here in studio with Mohammed. When the war started on February 28th, what were your first thoughts? How did you hear about it, and how did that feel?
Well, it's hard to not to get emotional with you even starting the statement of this war. I have been personally engaged with the news and sort of following the news almost all night, not to mention during the days and all that, almost all night. And that night, it was about 1 o'clock, probably after I dozed off, 1 o'clock in the morning. Then I turned the TV on BBC that we watch, and Al Jazeera, and then that's when I saw all the bombings going on, and then the news started. My wife woke up, comes to me, the TV was low, what's going on? I said, it has started. But that's how I found it out, and then the life started from that moment till now.
And how about for you, Hangame? How did you learn about it, and how did that feel for you?
Well, for us, I have to emphasize that the war hasn't been started just in a couple of weeks. So this is a constant war, has been started since 1979, and it's a war between the people of Iran and the regime. But that was escalated in January 8th and 9th, when thousands of people were shot and killed on the street. And that was the moment we lose the track of our normal life, and we couldn't live normally like normal people. We couldn't eat normally. We couldn't sleep. And the regime shut down the internet. So we had a very difficult, we had too much difficulty to communicate with our family. And so when I was just following the news, because it was just every other hour, we just wake up during the night to see what was going on and what's been happening in Iran, and mostly toward people, because we are afraid that people, they're civil people, they're killed by the regime. And so when the war started, it was kind of a hope for us, because we know that this is not a war between the people, and that's a military intervention. We interpret it as military intervention to rescue millions of Iranian. And actually, I would say that might be finalizing a war, a constant war.
Okay.
That's a battle for Iranian people.
And Manisher, thank you for calling in with us. And I want to let our audience know this is a sensitive conversation, so we're referring to Manisher by first name only at the request there. So I want to ask you, when these most recent strikes began, the U.S. and Israel on Iran, February 28th, how did you learn about that, and what were you feeling at that time?
Yes. I want to second what Hangame just said. The actual war started about 18 years ago by the Islamic Republic regime against the people of Iran. The people of Iran have come to the streets times and again, chanting death to this regime, death to Khamenei, and we don't want it. 18 years ago, on the streets of Tehran, for about 5 to 7 days, the people were owning the streets. The regime, in order to put it down, for the first time, opened fire on the people and killed them. The symbol of that killing was Neda Agha Sultan, who got shot while she was walking around in the heart and died on the spot. As Hangame very succinctly said it, this war has been going on, and the last phases of it was during the early week of January that the regime opened fire to millions of people who came out on the streets and said, we don't want you. And the number of the people who were murdered by the IRGC thugs on the streets exceeds 40 to 50,000 people, and hundreds of more have been injured. This is a liberation battle of the people of Iran against Islamic regime. The founder of the Islamic regime, Ayatollah Khomeini, made 3 statements at his time that are still ringing out. The first statement that he said was that dread the day that the people of Iran would realize your true nature. That will be an explosion, and that would be the beginning and the ending of you. That explosion happened in January in Iran. The second thing that he said was that whenever you are in trouble and you want to continue this thing, lie, lie, and lie. So the regime's mode of operation has been every time that comes in, they lie, and if they have to give a bigger lie, they're up to it. It is their policy. They make a bigger lie. And the third thing that he said was economics is the domain of donkeys. And when he said that statement, the exchange rate between the Iranian currency and the U.S. currency was about 8 to 1. It has exceeded 150,000 to 1 now. The prices have increased that way. The economic warfare that the Islamic Republic regime has launched against the people of Iran is ongoing. And to look at this war as a bombing started 4 or 5 weeks ago is kind of missing the whole point and not realizing what is actually happening in Iran. The people of Iran don't want this regime. They want something else, and it's a liberation battle. For me personally, we were expecting that something is going to happen. We were monitoring different news sources, as your other guest indicated, BBC, Al Jazeera, and then we realized that the bombing campaign has started.
Let me ask you this, and this is also for the panel, and Manisher, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on Mojtaba Khamenei as the new leader? The U.S. President Donald Trump has referred to this as regime change. Do you think this will be different? Do you think regime change has been achieved?
No, it's not a regime change. The liberation battle would continue until the collapse of the Islamic regime. Day before yesterday, this Islamic regime was in trouble, so they brought in an army of Iraqi thugs, the Hashad Shabi, and showed it on their live television. The mullah of the local big Iranian city had put a fatigue on, military fatigue on, but in order to show that he's the mullah, he had kept his mullah turban on his head. And on live TV, They warned the Iranian people that these guys have come in and we are going to use them to shoot you on the streets if you come out. This battle would continue. The people of Iran want liberation, no matter what kind of a thug or lowlife as Mojtaba Khamenei or any of them that they want to bring in as their new quote-unquote supreme leader or whatever name that they want to do. It is not going to cut the mustard.
What do you think,
And
Mohammed?
Yes, I have to respond to the comments of, I don't know if I want to call them colleagues, but the compatriot Iranians, with all due respect, their comment is coming from hatred. Their comment is coming from hatred of Islam and what Islamic government of Iran, another regime that I voted for, 1979 in this country. It's abhorrent that what the comment that you hear. Their information pretty much is lacking context, lacking truly information that public in this audience need to hear. Islamic Republic of Iran is not a regime. It has struggled for 46 years to establish independence from the world, either West, which was the Soviet, East, that was Soviet Union at the time, and West, which was United States of America, and has struggled ever since. The idea and the struggle of the revolution was not only just for Iranian people, for oppressed around the world. The fact that the world has witnessed over 70-some thousand Palestinians killed since October 7, 2023, no one in the United Nations or any international body has condemned that kind of killing of women and children. And then this audience, they come here, they beg the United States, in this case, Donald Trump, which, again, I'm not talking just as an Iranian, as an American citizen for 46 years, that now he has been trapped into an entity run by Netanyahu to enter to this war. They got their wishes. They asked for help, and the help is coming in the form of bombs that is killing their children. In Manab, a city, a girls' school, at least 86 children were massacred the first day of this war. So if they wished America to come with the help, they got it. Congratulations. This is not the world. Today, the world is paying the price. It's not just the Iranian, the world is paying the price. Unfortunately, the price that the rest of the world is paying is more of economics. Yet, yes, it's going to get to the point where we, not only in Cleveland, Ohio, throughout the states, throughout the world, hopefully, and we pray that it will not get any worse. This is not coming here and pointing the finger at certain ayatollahs or certain leaders. The Islamic Republic of Iran runs as an institution. It's a school of thought. It's not run by one person. You kill that one person. It's gone. Islamic resistance continues. As of today, as I'm coming to this TV, the NPR, which I'm a member of, have stated that strategically we are at loss. We're losing strategically because now we're losing the confidence of the world on the United States of America, which was supposed to be as a superpower, have balance. You cannot just use the hammer from your toolbox. Bombs are not going to solve any problems.
Do you believe, Mohammed, that this is regime change with the sun?
The idea and the intention is, but they have received responses that they've never expected. And that should be the answer to those who think and are wishful that the Islamic Republic of Iran will disappear. It will adapt. It has adapted. Mr. Trump can bomb and bomb and bomb, then you will have another Afghanistan. That after 21 years, the insurgency that took over ultimately kicked us out. So this is not the idea of somebody who ran away from Iran, probably come here and so-called diaspora which all depending on excessively trying to adapt the culture, not the true culture of the Western societies, the culture of alcohol, drugs, culture of being promiscuous, and then coming and giving opinion about the Islamic Republic of Iran, that they are in the street today, they are not going to sleep, the bombs are coming, but they're staying there supporting the Islamic system.
I want to bring Hangama into this conversation and ask you, what do you think, Hangama? Do you believe that this is regime change? That's what President Donald Trump is saying, that it has been achieved. We know that the son of the now deceased former Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, has stepped into power.
Yes, believe this is an absolute change. And President Trump actually responding to the request of the people of Iran. And this battle is exactly, yes, as Mohammed said, is against the Islamist ideology. It doesn't come from the point of hatred. It comes from the point of frustration. People have been struggling with this regime, with this ideology. Iran is a mixed country of all sort of ideology, and it's not going to be just restricted to one group of people. People are seeking freedom, and they're looking for the basic rights to oppose or to support this regime. For opposing or supporting this regime, first you first have to understand how this regime operates. They always start with populist slogans like supporting the poor, acting in the name of God, and then they infiltrate the deepest layer of society and then use those utopian promises and they try to indoctrinate people. And so we have Jews, we have Zoroastrian, we have Baha'i people, we have Christian people in Iran, and people don't want to be ruled by ideology. We're seeking for a secular regime that every people can practice what they want, but not to be imposed, to be forced to follow one specific ideology that which literally is opposed to human rights. So given all of those atrocities committed against the people of Iran, the destruction to the environment and devastation, the national resources and the natural and national resources, if you still see someone doubt about the dismantling of the regime, which is opposed to the basic civil human rights, you can be certain of one thing. They either have financial or political ties, interest in this regime. I mean, they have political or financial interested ties exactly in this ideology, or religiously, they're afraid of opposing this system because they think opposing the regime is equivalent to opposing the God. Or resisting the regime is resisting God.
I want to ask everyone here, and I'll make sure I ask everyone on the panel. So we'll start here in the studio, and then we'll move to you on the phone, Manasher. Are you still in touch with family and friends that are in Iran? What does that look like, communication?
I'm all by myself. Even now, I'm talking on TV, I'm on air, and I see my compatriot here. I'm afraid because I'm afraid my family are in danger by speaking up, by speaking out about my people, because this is what regime exactly started to threat us, that if Iranian abroad speak up about and shows their concern about their family member, all of our civil Iranian, so they're going to confiscate our properties and they're going to put our life in danger and our family members' life in danger. This is their method of, this is their pattern.
So does that mean that you have not been communicating
I have not been communicating.
Purposefully or because you're not able to?
I'm not able.
Okay. How about for you, Mohammed? Have you been able to connect?
To a degree, what she's saying is true. The communication is not the best. I have a family of 4 children here with 8 grandchildren and 1 on the way, inshallah, God willing. That makes us a little bit happy at this situation. The feeling that I have, and it's just that we're well connected with Iran. We, as a family, never taught hate to our children. Our children are all my daughters, 3 of them are, and my wife in the medical field, myself, my son, and my son-in-law in housing business, which we care, we advocate for that. One of my daughter, her husband being Iranian, was in Iran during the war of June and July. Her return took extra 30 days to come back. They're there with 3 of their children, while bombs started dropping at the country on that 12 days war. The family that we have is very well connected and seeing the truth versus what is coming mainly from West, from beamed in by millions of ways of communication, from Persian-speaking BBC, from TV International, paid by Gulf countries, beamed to Iran that have pretty much brainwashed the new generations, probably the 20 or 30-year-old. Just think about the day that these people, the demonstration started peacefully. Let's repeat that. January 28th sometime. When it started, it was economics. People came to the street expressing themselves for economic issues. One should ask anybody with truth in their heart and mind why economic pressure has been so extreme in Iran that people in the market, in the bazaar of Iran, which they basically are pro-system, pro-government, come and demonstrate is because of economic sanctions. Economic sanctions for over 46 years. One has to keep in mind, with all this that has happened against Iran, propaganda, sanctions, embargoes, they fought an 8-year war from 80 to 88 with Saddam Hussein of Iraq, which the entire world supported them. Let's not forget that, the entire world. Some of my colleagues, maybe, or people who come to the Cleveland street today, they were not born. They have not seen hardship of life that I personally witnessed and seen from my childhood when I was in a smaller city where deprived of every basic thing that human being needed. Therefore, 8 years of war. After that, the population of Iran has tripled from 27 to 30 million. Today, you are 92 to 100 million people. Let me tell you, at that time, prior to 1971, life expectancy of Iranians were 54 to 56 years. Today, they're from 70 to 80. The education for women in that area was 24% overall. Today is the college, more than 60% of the students are girls. So where is this idea of the country being this, being that? The good and well-being of the community is preferable over the right of certain individuals.
I want to make sure, thank you,
Yeah.
Mohammed. I want to make sure that we get an opportunity
Yes,
to
thank
ask
you.
Manouchehr about his connection with his family in Iran.
Yeah, we have not been able, like everybody else, to communicate because the Islamic regime has the disconnected means of communication, which is basically the internet. What your guest is here referring to the economic condition of Iran goes back to what their founder Khomeini said at that time, that the economy is the domain of the donkeys. The regret of the people of Iran is that they didn't go to the Tehran Zoo and bring some donkeys and turn over the economy of Iran to those donkeys. And unfortunately, they left it in the hand of these ayatollahs and the mullahs. They have ruined Iran. They have destroyed Iran. The liberation war is going to continue until we liberate Iran. And as Hengame said, that every Iranian is entitled to their belief, their religion, their way of choosing their way of life, and it would be voted by the majority of the people of Iran. So the dark and murderous
We have just a few minutes left.
murderous regime of the Islamic Republic is just is out there, and people have to just go read it.
Thank you, Manasher. We have just a few minutes left. We have a call from Don in North Royalton. Don, we could ask you if you could please share your question briefly so we can make sure we have the panel an opportunity to answer. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you to the panelists. We know that the war in Iran, as the president once said, that it was to save the demonstrators in Iran that were being killed by the leaders. But we know this is not true, because if it was, we wouldn't be so flagrant about killing our own demonstrators here in Minneapolis, Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and targeting a schoolhouse on the very first day of the war, killing 175 young people and a few educators. The corporate media of the U.S. needs to stop normalizing war, and I would like to ask the panelists about where's the truth. You know, Iran is putting up a good fight, and we don't hear about it. A strong fight. No fight is good necessarily in these instances, but we have to stop normalizing war. And even NPR, first couple days out, oh, the U.S. is running out of bullets. Okay, no. Let's
Don, do you have a question for the panel?
The war criminals. Okay, so can we implicate the war criminals, Netanyahu and Trump? Thank you.
Don, thank you for the comments. We appreciate it. I want to ask, as we wrap things up here, just a few minutes each, what you want to see moving forward. Hangame, I'll start with you.
The liberation of the people of Iran from Islamists and from the dictatorship. Freedom for people.
Manasher, how about you? What would you like to see moving forward?
I second Hangame's again. The liberation war of Iran will get there. We want to be able to choose our own government and throw Islamic Republic to the dustbin of the history as one of the most tyrant regime ever ruled the people during the history of the human beings.
Mohammed, for you, what would you like to see?
Yes, we pray that this war will not expand, so we won't see American life, that as we see more and more troops going to the Middle East, will be jeopardized with the peace of the Middle East and entire world, of course, and Iran. And yes, the change that is going to take place is that Iran will adapt, has been adapting as far as the freedom and all that. There's nothing that is missing for people who struggle and they want to have a better life for their families and children. There are many communities of Jewish descent, Christians, Zoroastrians, Arabs, Turks, Kurds, everybody living in peace and harmony, and they have better life. They have been having better life since 1979. I'm a good example of that. Thank you.
All right. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this conversation today. I want to thank our panel for speaking with us. Manasher, a Northeast Ohio resident, thank you for calling in today.
My pleasure. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to voice the real people of Iran's concerns and plans and their hope for the future.
Mohammed Sarabi, Northeast Ohio resident, thanks for coming in studio.
Thank you for having us.
And also Hangame Ajormende, MBA candidate at the Weatherhead School of Management, Case Western Reserve University. Thank you for coming in today.
I really appreciate for having me here today.
Appreciate it. We're going to get ready to take a quick break, and I do need to remind everyone it is almost April. So the question is, have you filed your taxes yet? If not, you might want to start collecting your W-2s during this short break. We will be back with the tax expert to answer your questions about changes to filing in just a minute. This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Stephanie Haney. We'll be right back. You're with The Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thank you for staying with us. Tomorrow is the first day of April, which, in addition to anticipated April showers, which we should be seeing some of this week, means that tax day is approaching on April 15th, and there are some changes to take note of. For instance, a growing number of filers are facing tax refund delays. This is amid the IRS's decision to phase out paper checks. We'll also talk about the no tax on tips change, which means some filers will be able to deduct up to $25,000 of tips from federal income taxes. So here to talk about these changes and answer your tax questions, we have Alexis Kim, attorney and partner with the tax group at the Thompson Hine Law Firm. Thanks for coming in studio.
Thank you, Stephanie.
We appreciate it. If you have questions about filing taxes or about tax law changes, or maybe you want to tell us about some awesome thing you did that got you a super great refund that we all need to know about, you can give us a call at 866-578-0903. You can also email us at soi@ideastream.org, or you can send us a message on Instagram at The Sound of Ideas. Now, Alexis, a lot of Americans are receiving bigger tax refunds this filing season. This is due to new tax breaks introduced in the president's landmark One Big Beautiful Bill. So can you talk to us high level about some of those changes?
Sure. Yeah, I think about that there was a 10% increase on refunds in average so far this filing season. A lot of it, as you mentioned, has to do with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or OB3 for short. And one of the big things is the increased SALT deduction. So if you pay
And that's state and local tax?
yes, state and local tax. So your state income tax, your local income tax, and then also property tax. And so here in Ohio, we don't have as high of a property tax rate as the people out on the coasts, but there are some communities with very high tax rates, and the $10,000 limitation really cramped down and made it difficult for a lot of people to utilize the full deduction. So now for married filing jointly, you can deduct up to $40,000.
That seems like a significant change. And what we've seen, the typical refund might be as much as $1,000 more than usual. That's something that's been reported. I want to ask you this. According to the latest census data, the median household income in Ohio is around $71,000. What do you think is the most impactful change this year for people earning about that amount of money? We'll say less than $100,000. What's going to actually make a difference in those refunds?
So the other big change that I wanted to talk about, and that will mostly affect those like moderate to lower income tax group individuals, is the qualified income or the qualified tips deduction and the qualified overtime deduction. And so both of those are brand new, part of the OB3. And even though a lot of employers, there's a transition rule, so employers didn't have to report that information for 2025 because it was only enacted partway through the year. However, it's still available for 2025. So there is guidance that the IRS has released. If you Google IRS qualified overtime, qualified tips, you'll be able to find their landing page, and they'll list all of the different guidance that they have, including guidance to individuals who did not have the information reported on their W-2 but would like to take advantage of that deduction. And so that can be really impactful. One of the things to keep in mind for qualified tips is it's only for types of jobs that typically historically have been paid with tips. So if you think about like service jobs, things where you usually expect to pay tips. And for the qualified overtime, there's been some talk in the news about are people calculating it correctly, because it's a little confusing. It's the amount in excess of what you normally would get paid. So if you get paid time and a half, it's only the half-time amount that's deductible.
I see. So say you work 40 hours a week, say just for simple math, you get paid $10 an hour for 40 hours a week, and then you work 10 more hours that week. So you're getting paid $15 an hour for those periods of work. You can only deduct the $5 extra.
Yes, the $5 extra for those 10 extra hours, yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the difference between a deduction and a credit as we're talking about these tax changes. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, so a deduction reduces your amount of taxable income. So it's going to, if you make $100,000 and you have, if you take the standard deduction, for example, if you're married filing jointly, that's $31,500. So you would reduce the amount of your income, by that standard deduction, and then your tax is calculated on the net. The difference with a credit is that the credit is actually dollar for dollar against the tax liability. So credit can be much more valuable.
Okay. So the credit is what you actually owe, and then you're just getting that additional money basically in your refund. Okay. Let's talk about that standard deduction for married people. There's been some conversation about whether it is actually more beneficial now to file married jointly than it may have been in the past. Is that true? Is that something that we're seeing this year?
It really depends. You have to run the numbers side by side. For example, if you have two spouses with maybe one really high earning spouse and one lower earning spouse, it's not as advantageous because the lower earning spouse is still taxed at the higher rate on that additional
If you file
income.
together?
Well, no, if you file separately.
Okay.
And so you really have to run the numbers, and a lot of tax softwares give that option where you can just run it both ways, or if you have an accountant who prepares your return, you can ask them to run it both ways and compare.
Okay, so the standard deduction for an individual is how much?
15,750. So it's basically half of what it is for married filing jointly. And then there's also head of household, which is individuals who are certain, like when you're a widow and you have kids who are under 18, you're head of household.
Interesting.
And then so they have, I believe their deduction is like 24,000. It's always kind of in between.
Okay. Is that what makes someone a head of household versus just an individual person with dependents, or is it the dependents piece? Like, what makes someone a head of a household?
Yeah, I don't remember the rule off the top of my head because, but I just remember when I was a widow and I had kids, I was head of household for a few years.
But
so,
that deduction is larger. Okay.
Yes, yeah, larger than individual.
Okay. Speaking about being married and filing jointly or not, what are the things that people should consider when they're trying to decide that?
When they're trying to decide married filing jointly or separately. Well, there's, it really just, I think you have to run the numbers and see. There's certain things that the deductions will be split, like the standard deduction is just split evenly. Depending on who has certain deductions, you may be able to use them if you itemize, if you file separately as opposed to filing together. If you don't have enough altogether to exceed the standard deduction. And then there's certain things that phase out over certain income limits. So, for example, the student loan deduction phases out after a certain income limit, and you'll have to run that to see if you can still take that if you file individually versus filing together.
And when you're talking about the student loan deduction, you're talking about being able to deduct from your income the amount of interest you've paid on student
Yes.
loans.
Yes, correct.
Let's talk about student loans a little bit more here. Asking for a friend. That friend is my husband. No. So here's a really specific situation. We got married in September. I have federal student loans. We are now at a point where we have to decide whether to file our taxes married filing jointly or married filing separately. I've been doing some reading on this, and I believe that if we file jointly, that full income is considered when it comes to my student loan payment if I'm on a student loan payment that's related to the amount of my income. Is that true? Basically, I'm trying to make sure my student loan payment doesn't double if we file jointly.
Okay.
Do you have any insight into this?
That is not a tax rule, but it probably is true because when you when you submit paperwork for an income-driven repayment plan, they're going to ask for your most recent tax information, and if you file jointly, then obviously it'll include your entire household income. But I don't know if there is some rule that if you happen to file separately but you are married, you still have to report your spouse's income. So look into that before
Okay.
you.
Good to know. I will say I did run it through the student loan payment calculator on
Okay.
the federal website, and it does seem like my student loan payment would double. So if anybody has insight into that, go ahead and send us a note at soi@ideastream.org. Okay, let's talk about tax breaks for charitable deductions. Anything new there?
So there is an increase in, I believe, the cash charitable deductions that you can deduct up to 60%. One of the differences between like taking the standard deduction versus itemizing is you think about, well, what do I have? So if you are particularly charitable, that's something, you may be able to itemize. And if you have real estate taxes, yeah.
Okay, so something else you, of course, have to look into as well. I want to remind our audience, if you're just joining us here on The Sound of Ideas, we are talking about changes to taxes this year for tax year 2025 now being filed. which is coming up real soon, the deadline to file coming up here mid-April. If you have a question or a comment for a tax attorney that we have here with us in studio, that number is 866-578-0903. You can also email us at soi@ideastream.org. So we know the deadline for filing is coming up here. It's April 15th. What does that deadline mean? We know a lot of people file extensions. Why can you file an extension? Does it matter? And what does that actually mean in practice?
Sure. So the extension, April 15 is the typical due date for an individual taxpayer. An extension is available. You get an automatic 6-month extension by filing a 4868, one-page form. What it means is that you have additional time to gather all the paperwork needed to submit your return. What it doesn't mean is that you do not get extra time to pay. So you still need to come up with a pretty solid estimate of what your tax liability is by April 15th if you believe you're going to owe taxes. Of course, if you believe that you're going to get a refund, then you don't have to make an additional payment at April 15. However, you should come up with an estimate, because if you don't pay everything by April 15, even if you filed an extension for your return and you file it, it's a 6-month extension, so it would be due October 15th. If you file it by then, but you owe taxes, you're going to have to pay interest and some penalties on that.
Okay, we have a question now from Instagram. Our Instagram account is The Sound of Ideas. You can always message us a question or a comment during the show. And the thought is, my mom receives Social Security, $2,100 and $4,600 monthly from her long-term care insurance policy. Her savings bridges the gap in care costs. Are long-term care payouts considered taxable income?
Oh, interesting. So I do know that some Social Security is sometimes taxable. I do not know the answer about the long-term care. I would definitely take a look at the irs.gov. They have a lot of resources on their website, including things about retirement or pension or long-term care benefits. So there's probably a publication available on there that you can find.
Okay. We have a call now from Linda in Lakewood. Linda, welcome to The Sound of Ideas. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm a senior citizen, not working anymore, and I don't receive a W-2. I have no other income from anything other than receiving Social Security retirement. Am I required to file a 1040 every year?
I believe the answer is yes. I know for state and local in particular, there's like a waiver form that you can file that's shorter. And so even though you do not have income to report, you still file the return. And I believe that's probably true with the federal, but I would check that on the instructions for the 1040 to confirm, Linda.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about something that was created, these accounts for young children that are tax-deferred investment accounts, Trump accounts. How do those work?
So I have not looked too much into the detail of these, but I think my understanding is that if you are born during a certain period, you will receive a seed amount of, I think it's $1,000 into this Trump account, and they are like a tax deferred, sort of like a retirement account. And the idea is that then family members can continue to make contributions to these accounts, kind of like you would to like a 529 plan, except it's not limited to saving for education.
Okay. And speaking of people who are senior citizens are getting an extra tax break this year. Can you break that down for us? People who are 65 and older by December 31st of the year they're filing for.
Is that for retirement that you're thinking of?
An individual deduction is my understanding, $6,000 for individuals and $12,000 for married couples as long as both spouses qualify. An additional deduction for people age 65 and older by the end of December 31st, 2025. So is that something that people would have to do anything to file for, or should that be something that is automatically kind of popping up?
Well, it should be popping up on the, if you're using tax prep software or if you're working with an accountant to prepare your returns, that's something that they should be aware of. And just based on your age, they should notice that you're eligible for that.
Okay. And what do you think people misunderstand, just at a broad level, about filing taxes? What's something that you would like people to know that maybe you think is a misconception or a misunderstanding?
Well, people always think it's painful, right? They say death and taxes. I don't think it has to be. There's a lot of options to help and available, even if you don't have a lot of resources to support you. So the IRS actually has a free file program, so access to a number of free software for tax prep online. It's income eligible, but even low to moderate income can still qualify. And then there's also throughout the United States, the IRS has what's called VITA, Volunteer Income Taxpayer Assistance clinics. And there's a number of them here in Northeast Ohio. You can go on the IRS website and take a look and see where those are, when they're open. Do you have to have an appointment to go? And they can provide one-on-one as personalized assistance to pay your taxes or prepare your tax return. The last thing, which hopefully too many people don't end up having to need, is there is an entity within the IRS called the Taxpayer Advocate Service, and their mission is to assist taxpayers who are encountering problems. So if you have filed your return and you are getting notices from the IRS and you don't know how to resolve them, or you've tried to resolve them on your own and it's not going anywhere, you can contact the Taxpayer Advocate Service. They have a website, and the form is aptly named the Form 911, and you can submit that to, there's a local office here in Cleveland, and they can help you.
Here's a little bit of a PSA for people.
Sure.
We talk about the extension. If you file that extension, if you owe taxes, you still have to pay that April 15th. But if you're going to get a refund, then you can file that extension, get your affairs in order, whatever. If you think you're owed money and you haven't filed for a couple years, you should file, because there's a deadline, right? In order to recover old refund money from the IRS, there's a 3-year deadline. So 2022, if you think you're owed money from tax year 2022 and you haven't filed, you got to get that in by the April 15th deadline, because you're going to lose that money.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's called the 3-year statute of limitations. And now it can work both ways. It can work for you or against you. If you have not filed and you owe the IRS money, don't think after 3 years they're not coming after you. If you haven't filed, that statute of limitations for them to come after you doesn't start. So it's basically open until you file a return. So definitely, if you have tax that you should have paid that you didn't pay because you didn't file, take care of that, absolutely, or the IRS will come after you with penalties and interest. But on the other hand, if you are owed a refund for a previous year, you have 3 years to file if you didn't file. And then if the IRS does not pay the refund after 6 months, you can actually file a suit for a refund, which is not an inexpensive thing to do, but it is an option.
Sure. Let's talk about timing as we start to wrap things up here. 25% of the staff of the IRS has been let go recently. So what do you think that will mean for how quickly people are getting refunds?
Yeah, so it's really a mixed bag. So the reports say about 90% of refunds are being issued within 21 days. However, there's about 1 million people who did not have direct deposit on file with the IRS who are getting notices that the IRS says you need to contact us and give us your direct deposit information because we don't want to issue paper checks. They're trying to get away from paper, understandably. However, not everyone, has access to a bank account or wants to share their direct deposit information. The Taxpayer Advocate has actually advised that if you received one of those letters, you can call the IRS and request a paper refund. Or if you wait, after 6 weeks, the IRS will issue a paper refund. So it may be delayed, unfortunately, but you will eventually get a refund.
And when you're filing and you're hoping for that refund, 6 weeks is a long time, for sure. All right, that's all the time we have for this conversation today. Alexis Kim, partner with the tax group at Thompson Hine. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Stephanie.
We appreciate it. That wraps up our show for today. If you missed any part of today's show, you can hear a rebroadcast tonight at 9 on 89.7 WKSU. You can also find the Sound of Ideas podcast or watch the show on the IdeaStream Public Media YouTube page, on demand every episode. To get the last word on today's topics, you can email us at soi@ideastream.org or find us on Instagram. We're at The Sound of Ideas. Yesterday on The Sound of Ideas, we talked about prison gerrymandering. This is a term that describes the U.S. Census counting incarcerated people where they are being held in custody rather than at their home of record, and then those census numbers being used to draw voting districts. Tom emailed in. Prison gerrymandering is a practice that harkens back to the Three-Fifths Compromise, where Southern slave owners wouldn't sign on to the Constitution unless they could count their slaves, whom they also considered as property in their census count, to gain greater representation in Congress. Thanks for sharing that thought with us, Tom. Tomorrow on The Sound of Ideas, our experts will explain what you need to know to register and vote in the upcoming Ohio primary election. Plus, with the federal SAVE Act on the table, we'll talk about potential changes to the registration process that could be coming soon. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thanks for keeping the conversation going here on The Sound of Ideas. We'll see you back here tomorrow.